"Are you headed out now?" I asked, and the two of them gave me a dirty smile, as if they had been waiting for me to ask.
"It's a spa trip. My mom and I are going to go to Colorado."
"Huh?"
"Well, take care of Dad for us."
She grinned as she said it. My wife and mother-in-law took their carry-on cases and walked out of the house. I was so surprised that I stood staring at the wall for a while. When I went to my father-in-law's room, my father-in-law suddenly got up. "Well," he said, rolling up his sleeves, "why don't we get started?" My name is Joe. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. I work remotely most of the week. I've been working for the same company since I graduated from college. I've been working there for 10 years now. Work is extremely busy every day, and though I find it challenging, it's a rewarding job. I worked hard at my job, thanks to my hard work. I am now a section manager. I also had a good home life. I had been dating Alyssa for 3 years. One day, Alyssa said,
"We should probably get married soon."
We were classmates in college, and we had been friends for a long time. We regularly went out for drinks together, and we had been keeping in touch, but it had never developed into romance. But gradually, after spending more and more time together, we began to feel comfortable with each other, and both of us became interested in each other, so we started dating. We got married after a year of dating. It has been a year since we got married. We know each other to the last detail. We are very comfortable and happy together. We are both working, but we share the household chores. To make sure my wife isn't doing all the work, we try to balance work and family life by helping each other. I was happy to have found someone willing to work together. My wife also said,
"I'm really happy to have married the man I love."
Seeming very happy when she said it, just like this, I thought, we would always live a happily married life. But then, something unexpected happened. When I came home from work, I was working overtime that day, and my wife had not come home yet. I came home around 9 p.m. I was wondering if my wife was also working overtime. My wife's job doesn't require much overtime. She rarely stayed out this late. I was a little worried. I sent a message to my wife. Then I received a surprising reply from my wife. She told me that her father-in-law had fallen ill. I told her I would go to the hospital right away. When I had finally arrived, my father-in-law's condition had become stable and he was sleeping. I thought about starting to head home, and I was told it was fine, but I waited a little anxiously for my wife to come back. She told me that her father-in-law had fallen down the stairs and hit his head pretty hard. He fainted and was rushed to the hospital. He had a concussion and still quite unstable, but he was not in a critical condition. However, my wife was not happy. Is there something else?
"That's the thing. When he fell, he damaged his spinal cord. It seems like he is going to have permanent damage."
"What?"
"He's going to need care after he gets out of the hospital."
I felt sorry for my father-in-law. He had just recently reached retirement age. It must be hard for him to get injured like that, I thought.
"So, I've been thinking, we should live with my mom and dad."
"What?"
"Well, I'm worried about my mom being alone, you know? I think she'll feel safer if we're with her, don't you? So I think we should live with them."
That is how my wife asked me to live with her parents. It is true that it would be very difficult for my mother-in-law to take care of my newly disabled father-in-law. I lost both my parents at an early age. I was a little worried, but I agreed to live with her parents. When my wife informed my mother-in-law of this, she seemed to be pleased as well. We moved into my parents-in-law's house, started living together. "Mother-in-law, let's work together, okay? Now that we will be living together."
"Yes, let's try our best."
After greeting my mother-in-law, I went to my father-in-law's room. My father-in-law was lying on the bed. He was asleep, his face pointed straight at me. "Michael, are you all right?" Oh, Joe, I'm sorry to worry you." "It's all right, don't worry. Alyssa and I will be around now to help out." "Thank you, that helps." My father-in-law smiled gently, but still, it was hard for him to be in this situation. He sounded somewhat sad and listless. My father-in-law was discharged from the hospital without incident, but he was still in need of regular rehabilitation. But even if he continues the rehabilitation, they are not sure if he will recover completely. That must be why he is so anxious. I felt that I had to take care of his mental health as well. I thought to myself, I'll do whatever I can to help you. If you have any problems or concerns, please feel free to talk to me. When I said that, my father-in-law's voice was a little more energetic. Thank you. That's very reassuring. When I returned to the living room from my father-in-law's room, I was called by my mother-in-law.
Joe, what are you doing?
What? Oh, I was just saying hello to Michael.
Well, don't go slouching about just yet. I want you to clean up the mess.
What? My mother-in-law stared at me with a scary face. I was so surprised, I stood frozen on the spot. When my mother-in-law saw me like that, she got angry again.
What are you waiting around for? Don't be a sloth. Move your ass.
She had been a very kind mother-in-law when we first got married. I was surprised to see her change so drastically and began to clean my parents' house in a panic. I didn't even have time to unpack my belongings. I had no idea that my mother-in-law was such a person. As soon as we started living together, I never thought she would change her attitude like this. After that, my mother-in-law kept giving me instructions to do this and that, cleaning the bathroom and toilet, cleaning the room, and occasionally cooking. My mother-in-law rarely did any housework. My wife also did nothing. And when I cook, my mother-in-law complains every time I cook.
You're not very good at cooking. I was really hungry, but I was relieved to hear that you and Alyssa were sharing the household chores.
My mother-in-law kept muttering complaints behind my back. I couldn't concentrate on cooking. My wife was relaxing, watching TV, and when it was finished, we all sat down at the table to eat. My mother-in-law acted as if she had made it herself.
I'm sorry I made you wait. Eat as much as you like. There's always room for more.
Thank you, Mother.
Alyssa, you've been working so hard lately, so eat up. You need the energy.
Her mother-in-law happily watched her daughter eating. When I was dating my wife before I married her, I had never met my parents-in-law. I didn't realize it, but it seems that my mother-in-law is obsessed with her daughter. I don't know if it's because she's their only daughter. I can feel that she wants to keep her daughter all to herself. Speaking of which, my wife lived at home until she got married. I am sure that my mother-in-law felt that I took her daughter away from her. She probably resented me because of it. I wondered if she thought that it was natural for her to live with us because my wife was her only daughter. To be honest, I am troubled by her spiteful behavior. After that, my mother-in-law continued to push me to do the housework and continued to act high and mighty. She also forced me to take care of my father-in-law. When I came home from work, I had to prepare dinner for my mother-in-law, take care of my father-in-law. Then I would begin to clean the house. When my wife came home from work, she always said she was tired. I was exhausted every day. I worked remotely every day, but my mother-in-law doesn't seem to recognize it as work. And even on the weekends, I had to do whatever my mother-in-law told me to do. When I go out for work, my mother-in-law does very little housework during the day. I have to hire a helper and pay for it with my own money. As expected, I couldn't stand this treatment from my mother-in-law, so I decided to talk to my wife about it. Your mother's treatment of me is a little too harsh. She's been saying things a little harsher than need be. Do you think you could tell her to calm down a little bit? When I asked my wife about it, she said something I didn't expect.
Why are you blaming my mother? As my husband, she relies on you. I won't allow you to speak ill of her.
What a pity. Just as the mother-in-law doted on her daughter doted on her mother. My wife was also totally passive about the situation. I'm not saying anything bad about her, I'm just saying that she relies on me a little too much. She's asking too much of me.
Don't go talking like that. You're just trying to make it easy for yourself. I asked you to help and support my mother.
I was angry that my wife was putting all the burden on me. Then why don't you help out? Since we started living in this house, you haven't done any housework, even taken care of your father. You haven't done anything, have you? When I said this, my wife said something even more impossible.
When I try to help, my mom tells me to stop it.
What?
Since I'm working, she wants you to support me. Since we were talking about having kids, she doesn't want me to be too overwhelmed. That's just how she thinks, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But that's...
If you want, I can just work completely remotely, then you can concentrate on the house.
I didn't want to do that. I think going into the office is a lot of fun. I enjoy going to work, and I'm getting a lot of responsibility. It's a very rewarding job. I just can't do everything remotely. In the end, rather than my wife taking my side, when more things came up, she just was more harsh about them.
I'm exhausted from work. Have you actually been doing the housework? You're not causing trouble for my mom, are you?
When my mother-in-law saw my wife chewing me out, she started grinning at me.
You really are a useless husband. Alyssa, a man like this, why don't you just leave him? Well, if it gets too bad, I will.
I was so shocked that my wife and mother-in-law would say that. I was absolutely mortified. How could they say such heartless words? Like it was the obvious thing to do. I went to my father-in-law's room to escape them and tried to concentrate on caring for him. Joe, I am so sorry that they're so troublesome. I'm sorry about my daughter. Since I grew older, she was the only daughter we were able to have. My wife doted on Alyssa and spoiled her. I apologize on behalf of both of them. No, Michael, it's not a bad thing. Don't worry about it. The only saving grace for me was that my father-in-law was a decent human being. Then, for a while, I had to endure punishment from my wife and mother-in-law while continuing to take care of my father-in-law. They were really hard on me, but still, when I thought of my father-in-law, I couldn't follow through with the divorce right away. Then one day, my mother-in-law and my wife did something even more unreasonable. I was working remotely for a long time that day. I woke up early and prepared breakfast for my father-in-law. Very unusually, my mother-in-law and wife also woke up early. "You're up early today," I said, and my mother-in-law grinned, and then laughed. I didn't understand why. Maybe because I said something about them being up early? I didn't want to bother asking her for details. I quickly started getting breakfast ready. My wife and mother-in-law were... Maybe because I said something about them being up early? I wondered what they were doing, so I asked them, "Are you headed out now?" When I asked, the two of them gave me a dirty smile, as if they had just been waiting for me to ask.
Mom and I are going on a spa trip. We're going to Colorado.
What?
Well then, please take care of Dad, okay? We're counting on you.
And with that, and grins on their faces, my wife and mother-in-law took their carry-ons and left the house. I was so surprised that I stood staring blankly for a while. I never thought that she would go on a trip and leaving me behind with her father. It's really unbelievable. Now might be a good time. I still have a lot of preparations to do, but I had reached my breaking point. I immediately went to my father-in-law's room. "Michael, I'm sorry. I need to talk to you about something." As I spoke to him, he turned his face towards me. "Joe, are you getting a divorce?" "What? How did you know?" "Because I could tell by the look on your face that you have reached the end of your rope. Don't worry about me. You go on with your life." "Michael." "Where did those two go, by the way? Did they go on vacation?" "Yeah, they said they were going to Colorado." When he heard they had gone on a trip, my father-in-law was stunned. Then, my father-in-law suddenly got up. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Well, let's get started." "Huh? What? Michael, how can you get up?" "It's because of my rehab. Just recently, I've finally been able to raise my upper body. In fact, I was going to tell you this earlier, but you seem to be having a hard time. Just when I was going to tell them, they would complain, saying I should go to the hospital less often, so when I was able to move around a little more, I figured I'd only tell you. It only seemed right." "I didn't realize that. From now on, I'll be able to move in a wheelchair. Let's get started on the preparations right away." I nodded at my father-in-law's words and immediately started to prepare for the divorce. I went and got 2 copies of divorce papers, and also changed the locks on my parents-in-law's house. A few days later, my mother-in-law and my wife finally came home. They couldn't seem to open the lock. They tried to force the door open, banging and slamming on the door. I had no choice, so I locked the door.
"What's going on? Why can't we unlock the door?"
My wife and mother-in-law were furious. I replied calmly, "I changed the locks. Come to the living room so I can talk to you guys." Their faces were red as I forced them to come into the living room.
"What? Dad? You're in a wheelchair. You can sit and move on your own?"
My father-in-law ignored their astonishment. "Sit there," he said. "What the hell were you two thinking? You're going to leave everything to Joe. Taking a trip to Colorado. You're so selfish. I can no longer tolerate your selfishness. I'm divorcing you. I'm cutting you off, Alyssa. I want you both out of this house. When my father-in-law said this, my mother-in-law and wife were quite upset.
Why are you divorcing me? Yeah, what are you talking about, Dad? You can't just cut me out of your life.
Hush, you both are in this together. Do you not realize what you've been doing? Making Joe do all the housework and take care of me, while the two of you just complain and talk crap. You two have done nothing but hurt him. I will never forgive you. Such horrible actions like that. My mother-in-law and wife flinched at my father-in-law's angry voice. I took advantage of this and opened my mouth. Alyssa, you're having an affair, aren't you? My wife was shocked at my words.
What? Don't bullshit me.
The moment I suspected something was wrong, I immediately asked the detective agency to check it out. Then I found a picture of you and a man from your work. I got a lot of pictures. According to the story, you were trying to get me out of the house and get him to come into the house, weren't you? I'm assuming that was your loving mother's idea. When I said this, my mother-in-law and wife turned pale. Both of them were so upset that they couldn't speak properly after that. Anyway, I'm divorcing you. And moving out of this house. I'm going to pay you alimony for the affair. I'm also going to charge you for the mental anguish I've suffered as a result of your harassment.
No, that's...
My mother-in-law and wife were speechless, fell into a heap on the spot. After that, my father-in-law and I were able to divorce our respective idiotic partners, and my ex-wife, I made her pay a pretty large amount of alimony. My ex-wife remarried. She was trying to use her new husband as her new housekeeper. She was eventually abandoned by him as well. Because she had an affair at work, it didn't take long for rumors to spread within the company. As the rumors spread, they began looking at her coldly, and since we went to the same university, our mutual friends have abandoned her. She is now spending her days paying off her debts alone, and my ex-mother-in-law was also abandoned by my father-in-law. She is now working part-time, and she is living a poor life alone in a small apartment. By the way, my father-in-law no longer needs to support my mother-in-law, so with the money he saved, he was able to hire a helper. He is able to live alone in his house. He has been working hard on his rehabilitation since then. At this rate, he may be able to walk with a cane. I have been in touch with my father-in-law regularly, and make sure to send him words of encouragement. In return, he has taught me how to behave as a leader, and how to work well with your subordinates. Even though my ex-wife and I are divorced, I still have a good relationship with my ex-wife. On the advice from my father-in-law, I will continue to do my best in my work from now on. Thank you for watching.